Before we begin, you should know, the names in this story have been changed. Not to protect others, but to protect me. Because every word you're about to hear is true. And if you choose to judge me, I won't stop you. I probably deserve it. My name is Melissa. I'm 31 years old, and this is the story of how I dismantled everything I once loved, piece by piece. All because I believed I could outsmart the consequences of my own choices. For months, I lived a double life. By day, I was the loyal wife of Howard, steady, kind, predictable Howard. The man who loved routines, paid bills on time, and never raised his voice. The kind of man most women beg the universe for. But behind his back, I was someone else entirely. Frank, his co-worker, was the spark I never saw coming. He made me feel awake in ways I didn't even know I'd gone numb. Every message, every glance, every stolen moment pulled me further away from the woman I thought I was, and deeper into a web I couldn't untangle. Stay with me till the end, because this isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about illusion, guilt, and the moment I realized that being desired isn't the same as being loved. And if you're new here, subscribe to Dark Infidelity Stories, where every confession reminds us that the greatest damage is often self-inflicted. It started harmless enough, stolen glances, private jokes, long meetings that ended with just one drink. But those drinks turned into hotel rooms. And before long, guilt became a background noise I could easily tune out. I told myself it was love, that I deserved this kind of excitement, that I wasn't doing anything wrong, just following my heart. 8 months into our affair, Frank leaned across the hotel bed one night, grinning like a devil, and said, "Why don't we just do it, Maggie? You and me. Vegas." The idea felt electric, dangerous, and I loved it. Howard was steady, reliable, the man who triple-checked our bills and never forgot to change the air filters. Frank was the opposite, reckless, spontaneous, thrilling. In that moment, I didn't care about right or wrong. I just wanted to feel. So when a work conference took me to Las Vegas, I packed more than just business clothes. I packed my delusion. That night, wearing a cheap white dress I bought from a discount rack, I stood under flickering neon lights and said "I do" to a man I wasn't even legally free to marry. Afterward, drunk on adrenaline and ego, I thought of Howard, the man I had betrayed, and decided to twist the knife. I took a photo of me and Frank holding our marriage certificate, both of us grinning like fools. Then I texted him. "Just got hitched to Frank. Been sneaking around for 8 months. Easiest thing I've ever done. Thanks for being such a joke." I pressed send. And with that single text, I detonated my life. While I was laughing over champagne in Vegas, Howard was already 3 steps ahead. Everything, the house, the bank accounts, even my cards, were under his name. By the time I landed back home, my cards declined, my passwords were locked, and I felt the floor drop out beneath me. Still, I told myself I could fix it. I'd always been able to talk my way out of things. Surely I could talk my husband into forgiving me, right? The next morning, I dragged my suitcase up the driveway, rehearsing every line of my outrage. But when I put my key in the lock, it didn't fit. My stomach twisted. I tried again. Nothing. Then the door opened. Howard stood there, calm as ice, sipping an iced tea like it was just another quiet afternoon. "Why don't my keys work?" I snapped. He took a slow sip and said, "Because you don't live here anymore. Remember Vegas, Frank?" My face burned. "You can't do this. I have rights," I shouted. He just looked at me, unfazed, and in one smooth motion, threw the rest of his drink in my face. Cool. Final. Then he shut the door. Fuming, drenched, and humiliated, I called the police. I told them I'd been assaulted, that he threw water on me and locked me out of my own home. When they arrived, Howard simply showed them his porch camera footage. There I was, pounding on the door like a madwoman while he calmly tossed water. "This is hydration, not assault," one of the officers joked. Then Howard showed them something worse. The Vegas photo, the marriage certificate, the timestamp. The proof of my betrayal. They told me flat out, if I'd legally married another man, my claim to the house was gone. Their voices were cold, professional, but their eyes were full of pity. When they drove off, I stood there trembling, part rage, part regret. The humiliation burned deeper than the ice water ever could. But I wasn't done. Not yet. The next day I came back, and this time I didn't come alone. I brought Frank, my mother Evelyn, and my sister Dorothy, my loyal audience of enablers. Evelyn, ever the dramatic matriarch, was convinced I was the victim. Dorothy came for the spectacle. And Frank? Well, he looked like he already regretted everything. We marched up to the door like an army. Howard opened it without surprise, calm, composed, and sipping lemon water now. "You coward," I spat. "You humiliated me in front of the police." He smiled slightly. "Technically, you did that yourself. I just attended." That smirk made my blood boil. My mother stepped forward, voice sharp and righteous. "Young man," she declared, "this is still her home." Howard tilted his head, amused. "Oh really? Then why did she marry a slot machine technician in Vegas?" Silence. Even hearing it out loud made the whole thing sound cheap. I froze. Frank shifted behind me, staring at the ground like a kid caught stealing. My cheeks burned. For the first time, I felt the weight of everything I'd done. And that confrontation, that was only the beginning of my downfall. Dorothy folded her arms and shot Howard a look sharp enough to cut glass. "You're being childish," she snapped. Howard tilted his head, one eyebrow arching. "Childish? That's rich. I'm not the one who cheated on their spouse, ran off to Vegas, married a guy from a casino floor, and then strutted back here like we're filming the Real Housewives of small-town America." His words didn't just sting, they sliced straight through me. My breath hitched, my chest burned. I wanted to scream, to claw back even a shred of control. Instead, my voice cracked into a shaky demand. "We're getting this house appraised. I want my half." Howard didn't even blink. He simply lifted his phone toward the porch camera, waving like a man posing for a photo. "Smile for the footage," he said evenly. "But sorry, sweetheart. Your little Vegas stunt voided your claim. This is a monopoly, you don't get to pass go, and you definitely don't collect $200. Evelyn gasped, clutching her pearls like she just witnessed a public execution. Dorothy's face twisted into a scowl, and Frank muttered something under his breath about not doing this here. But it was too late. The moment had already detonated. Howard turned, calm as ever, and shut the door with the slow, deliberate finality of a coffin lid closing. But I wasn't finished, not by a long shot. Later that same afternoon I came back. What? Honestly, I couldn't tell you. Maybe it was humiliation. Maybe denial. Maybe just sheer madness. But there we were again, me, my mother, my sister, and poor Frank, storming up the walkway like we were staging a protest. I shouted that locking me out was illegal, that I'd call the police again. Howard didn't even flinch. He leaned against the doorframe, iced tea in hand, calm as a king surveying a losing army. "Oh, Evelyn," he said dryly when my mother started wagging her finger, "you want to call the cops again? You remember last time, they asked if I was okay." Dorothy shoved forward, voice rising like a whip crack. "You're a controlling psycho." Howard smirked. "Sorry, what was that?" "Got distracted by gravity." Even Frank tried to puff up his chest then, stepping forward as if he could reclaim some dignity. "Dude, you're being unreasonable," he said, trying to sound brave. Howard's reply landed like a dagger. "By the way, Frank, expect an email from HR. I'll be sending them your wedding photos. I hear the company loves surprise marriages and workplace scandals." Frank's face drained of color instantly. It was like the floor vanished beneath him. My stomach twisted into knots. This wasn't just a marital mess anymore, it was about to wreck our livelihoods too. Panic clawed at me. I tried to pivot, to play the victim. "You're financially abusing me," I cried. "You're freezing me out of everything I've worked for." Howard just pointed toward the garage, expression flat. "Your clothes are boxed and waiting. You've got 1 hour to grab them before I start charging rent." I wanted to scream, to throw something, to undo everything, but all I could do was drive away with my mother, sister, and a mortified Frank. We went to rent a U-Haul, but when I swiped my card, declined. The silence that followed could have filled a cathedral. "Run it again," I snapped at the clerk, my voice shaking. But the second attempt failed too. Frank sighed, shoulders slumping, and reluctantly handed over his debit card. Watching him pay for the truck, seeing that hollow look on his face, made something inside me crack. For the first time, I realized this wasn't a rebellion or a love story anymore. It was a disaster. By the time I hauled my last box out of that house, one brutal truth hit me hard. Howard had beaten me at my own game. I thought I was clever, calculating, in control. But he had everything: proof, cameras, accounts, and power. Still, I couldn't accept defeat. I refused to let the world paint me as the villain. So I went nuclear. I took the war online. I posted everywhere, claiming Howard had been abusive and controlling, that I had been forced to find love elsewhere. My mother and Dorothy backed me up, reposting, defending, amplifying. And for a short time, people actually believed me. Messages of sympathy poured in. Some even called Howard a monster. But Howard wasn't alone. He had friends, one in particular, a quiet tech genius named Ezekiel, who would unravel every lie I had spun. And when he did, my carefully constructed story began to collapse. Second update. For a brief moment, I felt untouchable. My posts were circulating, gaining traction. People pitied me, and I thought, maybe I can turn this around. Maybe I can still win. Howard had cut me off financially, but if I could brand him as an abuser, maybe I could claw back something in court. That fantasy lasted about a week. Then Ezekiel dropped the bomb. He recovered old Facebook messages between me and Frank, private ones I'd long forgotten about. Messages where I bragged about hiding grocery money, siphoning off cash, about securing the bag before ditching Howard. And then came the line that would end me. Can't wait to see his face when I take him for everything. When Howard posted those screenshots publicly, my world fell apart overnight. The sympathy turned to venom. Friends who had defended me now called me a liar, a manipulator, a gold digger. Some even blocked my number. Desperate, I tried everything. I begged my father to contact Howard's boss, claiming Howard was harassing me. I told myself if I could ruin his job, I'd regain some power. But Howard's boss already knew the whole saga, and found it amusing. My father's call was dismissed like a mosquito buzzing near an ear. I started spiraling. One night, around 3 a.m., I tried breaking into the house again, screaming about my grandmother's jewelry. Truth was, Grandma was alive and wearing that jewelry at bingo every Thursday. But I didn't care. Logic had left me long ago. Then came my lowest point. I told anyone who'd listen that Howard had killed my cat. The catch. We never even owned a cat. I don't know why I said it. Maybe because I was desperate for attention, for sympathy, anything to keep from facing myself. The police didn't buy it. They barely hid their laughter. When my lies failed, I tried begging. I called Howard's mother, sobbing, telling her I'd made a mistake, that Frank meant nothing. Her voice came back cold as ice. You should have thought about that before you did the horizontal mambo with him for 8 months, dear. Her words cut deeper than anything Howard ever said. But the final humiliation came soon after, when Frank's mother, Gina, called Howard herself, asking him to take me back so Frank wouldn't have to support me. Hearing her call me a burden broke something in me. Howard laughed her off, of course. He didn't even take it seriously. He didn't need to. He'd already won. And then came the day of our first divorce hearing. I showed up determined to reclaim some dignity. I wore a white dress, some twisted attempt to remind everyone I was once a bride, that I deserved sympathy. Dorothy came too, loud as ever, radiating drama before she even opened her mouth. As we walked into the courtroom, I expected silence, authority, justice. Instead, it felt like a stage play. Howard's lawyer, a slick, confident man named Ronald, wore a faint smile, like he already knew the ending to a story I was still pretending to control. Ronald leaned back in his chair, whispering sly jokes to Howard during the proceedings, as if my entire life wasn't being dissected and destroyed right there in front of everyone. My own lawyer tried to save me, painting a desperate picture. He argued that the Vegas wedding didn't count, that I had been under emotional distress, manipulated, swept up by Frank's charm. For a moment, I almost believed his version of me, the helpless woman led astray by passion and pain. But then Ronald, that smug snake, stood up with a smile that made my stomach turn. He dropped a thick binder onto the judge's desk with a dull thud. Inside, 69 printed pages of Facebook messages. My messages. Every lie, every boast, every cruel word I'd ever typed was suddenly public property. There it was, proof that I had plotted the Vegas elopement for months, that I'd bragged about securing the bag, that I'd mocked Howard like he was nothing more than a punchline in my little rebellion. The judge's expression changed with every page he turned. First, mild curiosity, then disbelief, and finally, disgust mixed with amusement. He looked up from the stack and read aloud one of my own lines. Can't wait to see his stupid face when I take him for everything. Then he fixed his eyes on me and asked, "Did you write this, ma'am?" My entire body went cold. I could feel the blood drain from my face. That was taken out of context. I stammered. Howard leaned forward just enough for his voice to carry. And what kind of context makes that sound better? Monopoly? Laughter rippled through the courtroom. It was over. My humiliation was complete. When the gavel finally struck, it sounded like the closing of a cell door. Divorce, granted. The judgment hit harder than I could have imagined. I walked away with nothing but my car, a few boxes of personal belongings, and a mountain of debt I could barely breathe under. No share of the house. No alimony. In fact, I was ordered to pay him $500 a month for 6 months, because he had supported me through a certification program while I was too busy finding myself. It felt like the ground beneath my feet had vanished. But the humiliation didn't stop in that courtroom. It followed me right out the door. The moment we stepped outside, chaos erupted like a bomb. My mother, Evelyn, was screaming accusations at Howard. Dorothy, my sister, grabbed a cup of coffee from her purse and hurled it toward him, missing completely and splashing it all over Gina, Frank's mother, who had shown up to support young love. The sidewalk turned into a war zone. Evelyn was flailing, Dorothy was shouting, Gina was screeching, and the bailiff looked like he wanted to quit his job on the spot. And Howard, he just stood there, composed, sipping iced tea like he was watching some low-budget soap opera. That smug expression made my stomach twist with hatred and shame. But the worst part wasn't his calm, it was Frank's absence. Because Frank wasn't there at all. I learned the truth a few hours later, when Gina's furious shrieks gave it away. Frank had already left me. He'd met a 22-year-old bartender during our so-called wedding reception in Vegas, and now he was with her. Just like that, my second marriage had crumbled before it even began. I had destroyed everything, my husband, my home, my security, for a man who didn't even bother to show up when I fell apart. The shame was suffocating. I tried clinging to Dorothy for comfort, but that lasted about 2 minutes. When I muttered that I couldn't stay in her apartment because it smelled like cats and sadness, she glared at me like I'd just spat on her soul. She turned her back and I knew I'd lost her too. Piece by piece, my support system collapsed. By the end of the week, I had nowhere left to go but back to my parents' house. Even my mother, who once defended me to the grave, now looked at me like I was something fragile and exhausting. Her public defense continued, but her eyes were tired. Meanwhile, Howard was thriving. He sold the house for more than the asking price, moved into a sleek downtown condo, and, of course, started dating someone new. A woman named Jennifer from his gym. I hated how effortless he made it look, how alive he seemed. Photos of him smiling over coffee popped up online, taunting me. I told myself I'd fight back. I filed for an annulment of my Vegas marriage, blaming it on temporary insanity. Even my lawyer gave me that look, the kind reserved for hopeless cases. And deep down I knew he was right. My excuses sounded hollow, even to me. Frank never came back. Turns out, the bartender dumped him the moment she found out he was still legally married to me. Apparently, her brother even punched him before throwing him out into the Vegas night. A fitting ending for the man I once believed would save me. But there are no saviors in stories like mine, only lessons. The shame clung to me like smoke I couldn't wash off. Everywhere I went, the whispers followed. I wasn't Melissa anymore. I was that woman, the one who cheated, eloped, and ended up with nothing but gossip for company. Howard, of course, had the last laugh. He framed my Vegas marriage certificate and hung it in his lawyer's office, right next to a bumper sticker that read, "Divorce, it's cheaper than murder." And that's when it finally hit me. I hadn't just lost a husband. I'd lost everything, my reputation, my friends, my dignity, and somewhere in the wreckage, myself. All because I mistook recklessness for freedom, and arrogance for power. Now the only thing left is the echo of my own bad choices, a haunting reminder that some mistakes don't fade, they just change shape. If this story gripped you, don't forget to subscribe to Dark Infidelity Stories, where every betrayal burns, every truth unravels, and every confession comes with a cost. Like, share, and comment below if you believe that some lessons are only learned the hard way.